Hey guys, it's Steve. Welcome back to Build Life. Today I want to take a look at two kinds of tractors most people commonly consider when trying to figure out what they should buy for their property. This is a video I've been wanting to make for some time, and now I've got both machines here, so it's easy to do. But I want to take a look at the compact tractor. Mine is a Kubota, but really any brand, they're very similar. And the skid steer. I have a Case skid steer, there's Bobcats, there's all kinds of brands of those as well. But I feel like these are the two most commonly considered machines when trying to pick out what's right for your property. So I want to take a look at them both. I want to share with you what I think are their advantages, which might be a disadvantage for the other one. And maybe you can make an educated decision then on what's right for you. Before we get into what I like about each machine or what their advantages are, I want to talk about their similarities. Both of these machines come in diesel for the most part. I think you could probably get both of them in gas, but 90% of the time you see them both in diesel. Both of them are four-wheel drive. The systems work a little different. The skid steer is hydrostatic, and this Kubota, in my case, has a locking rear differential. So they work a little different, but they are both four-wheel drive. Both are available. Well, the skid steers come standard with the quick attach. That was kind of invented as the skid steer method for attaching buckets and implements. Most of the compact tractors, if they don't come with it, have an option for that same front loader attachment setup for removing and installing attachments, your bucket, things like that, which makes them interchangeable. And it also means that there are a lot of different buckets and attachments, forks, things like that, that you can rent or make or buy for your machine. Both machines have auxiliary hydraulics. So on my Kubota, it has them in the rear, came standard. We actually ran some hoses up to the front so I can operate a grapple bucket. On the skid steer, it has them on the front. Okay, so I've broken this down into 10 things for each machine that I like best. I'm going to say Kubota here because I have a Kubota and that's the way my brain works, but whether your tractor is orange, green, yellow, blue, purple, pink, whatever it is, they pretty much have same features. A lot of these things will apply regardless of the color of your tractor. Number one, on compact tractors, subcontract, full-size tractors, any kind of farm-style tractor, they come with a 3-point hitch on the back. This is probably the biggest difference between a skid steer and a compact tractor. Those 3-point hitches also come with a PTO, power takeoff, and that is how many of the attachments for this kind of tractor are mounted and run. If you've got something like a mower and you're out mowing your field, it's going to require that PTO to turn the blades. If you're using something like a box blade that doesn't have moving parts, doesn't have a gearbox in it, it's just something you drag behind, then you won't use a PTO for that. You'll just hook it to the 3-point hitch. Another thing I really like about compact tractors is the way they drive on turf. So a lot of times I use mine around my property here where I live in Illinois. My 2501 Kubota actually has turf tires on it. The new 4060 has a more aggressive tread, your traditional tractor tire. But either one of those, because that machine, the wheels drive forward, then you put it in reverse and drive it backwards. They're very easy on the lawn. They're very easy on the turf. So if I need something I want to drive across established lawn, especially if it's a little wet out, that compact tractor, the Kubota, is my choice every time. Number 3, compact tractors are a lot better about not getting stuck. They have a higher ground clearance than the skid steers do. They have bigger tires. They have four-wheel drive with lockers. I guess there's probably a number of reasons, but I have found skid steers are very easy to get stuck in the mud. Sometimes they even have a hard time traversing on ice. You could put chains on the tires. You can do a lot of things to make that better. I would say with the Kubotas, the longer wheelbase, the larger tires, and the way the four-wheel drive system is set up, higher clearance, really would be my first choice if you're on a muddy terrain or anything like we are in Kentucky. I've had instances where my little 2501 with turf tires walks right up a hill to get to the top, and you really got to work at it to get the skid steer up the hill. My number 4 is the fast ground speed, especially like here at my property from one end to the other is pretty far. It's about, I don't know, 1,400 feet, something like that. When you drive a skid steer from one to the other, it takes a long time. It's fine if you're going to go to one area and work, but let's say at my property here, I have a field in the back where I've got some brush I want to burn. But my burn pile is all the way in the front of the property. If you have to make very many trips like that, the Kubota will quickly pass up the skid steer as far as running trips back and forth. It also, that higher ground speed is better if you need to drive it somewhere. Like let's, I don't know, I found myself in a position before I didn't have a trailer available and I had to drive from my shop to my house with the Kubota. It's about 7 miles. In a skid steer, that will take you half a day. That Kubota, especially this new one here, probably does 20 miles an hour. You can get skid steers with a, I don't know, everyone calls it something different, transport speed, shuttle speed, where they're a little faster, but they're not going to be anywhere near as fast as, farm-style tractor, compact tractor, something like the Kubota. Another thing I really like about the compact line of tractors, or just this, like I was saying, farm-style tractor, is how many different models they have. And there's a lot of models within skid steers as well, but not nearly as many as you see with these compact tractors, subcompact tractors. In Kubota alone, man, you go from their smallest BX to their biggest Grand L series, which is still doesn't even get into the larger farm size tractors. There's got to be 20 different models of tractors. So you can really get specific in what you need for size, where you store it, maybe how much it weighs if you need to transport it, what your needs are, lift capacity, horsepower, attachments. If you're somebody that doesn't have a big property, you just want it for help in your garden and you want to put it in your garage, then that BX series is great for you. When you, like we're doing in Kentucky, where you want to use it for some construction application, material moving, things like that, maybe you have a barn to keep it in, then a bigger machine might work better for you, but they have lots more options, one to fit, every need and every budget. I'm sure probably says that in their brochure somewhere. Another thing that I think gets commonly overlooked is the ease of getting in and out. When you get on and off of a Kubota tractor, if you're doing a job where maybe you're picking up rocks or things that you have to get off, throw them in there, hooking up attachments, taking things on and off, the Kubota is a walk-in, walk-out machine. It's quite comfortable. It is much safer to get on and off of a Kubota if you have something in the air on the loader. If you're on a skid steer, you are climbing in and out of that machine, and if you pick something up in the air, maybe you want to hang something to work on it, you have to crawl out, now with no bucket or step to get down, which is not the end of the world, but you are crawling out underneath that loader, hanging your load in the air. And you better be sure it's secure and trust the hydraulics in that machine, which again, most of the time is fine, but I'm sure there have been lots of accidents where stuff has come down or fallen off with somebody crawling in and out from under it. I don't like doing that if I don't have to. Again, farm style tractor, compact tractor, my Kubota, you exit the left side, I guess it would be the driver's side on a car, but you're getting off to the side. You're not getting out underneath your loader. Much safer option. Another big plus on the compact tractors, if you are loading things on and off a trailer, if you have material to move, you're loading hay bales, putting things away in a barn, things like that, general material handling, where you have forks on the front, or even, I guess, spreading stone, things like that with the bucket. There is a lot more forward reach on a compact tractor than there is on a skid steer. And what I mean by forward reach is when your front tires are touching or as far as you can go, the bucket on a compact tractor sticks out quite a bit further to get up and over something. When I'm loading over the side of one of my dump trailers with the skid steer, my tires on the skid steer, the front tires are pretty much touching the fenders on that machine. Where if I'm doing that with the Kubota, I can be much further back out of the way, keeps you from running into the trailer. Again, you can have further reach if you've got to get something off the far side of the trailer. That's an option. That can be a big advantage there. So the 8th thing that I have put together on my compact tractor list for advantages is high visibility. When you are sitting on top of the Kubota, it doesn't have a cage around you. You're not, inside this tunnel. You're set up high. You can really see everything around you, which is important, especially if you're maneuvering around, vehicles, things, buildings, whatever it is, or even just mowing. You can see what's beside you. You really have a good view of your surroundings that can sometimes be a little tricky in a skid steer. Okay, so enough about my Kubota. Let's take a look at the skid steer. This is a machine that I've grown up with. Not this one in particular, but my father's had skid steers. He was a concrete guy, and so that's kind of what I grew up driving. But we grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. It was taken to work. You didn't use it around your house because your front yard was about the size of the machine. There just wasn't a lot of need for that kind of agricultural use like I use things for around here. So I think the number one advantage, the main thing I like about a skid steer is that these things are a powerhouse in a small footprint. If you look at this skid steer here, the one that I own is quite a bit shorter than my Kubota tractor, but it is about 30% more horsepower. It's even smaller than my little 2501 Kubota, and it's got almost 3 times the horsepower that thing does. And lift capacity, that little 2501 can maybe lift 1,000 pounds. This skid steer is good for about 3,000 pounds. It really puts the farm-style tractor to shame when it comes to that lifting. Now, I know you can just buy a bigger Kubota, you can just buy a bigger tractor, and that's right. But that if you start buying a machine that can do the things these skid steers can do, that can lift that kind of capacity, you are going to see a really big footprint on that machine. It's not the kind of thing that you could just put in a garage or a small barn, shed, something like that. But you can with these skid steers. It is a small machine for the amount of power it has, and a lot of that it can handle that power because it's compact. Can't get a lot of leverage. Can't get the loader out too far away to flip it over. They're just really compact for the amount of power they have comparatively. The second thing, and this might not make sense to some of you, is that they are not as tip easy. And I know that might sound funny because anyone that's driven a skid steer very much has probably tipped one, myself included. But I've never tipped the farm tractor. Let me explain what I mean. On a skid steer, going up a steep hill, you could flip it over backwards, but it has a very large counterweight on the back that catches it and it tips right back up. It also has a big loader on the front. If you were to tip it forward, you put the loader down and you come right back up. So they are very easily correctable. I have not seen anyone tip one sideways. I'm sure it's happened, but it's just not the way you lift the load. It's not the kind of thing that typically happens. Now, that being said, skid steers do not traverse like a farm tractor does. You wouldn't drive it up the side of a steep hill sideways like if you were mowing a ditch or something like that. That's not the kind of work you typically do with a skid steer, so it doesn't find itself in a position where it could tip as much. Usually when a skid steer tips, it's from lifting heavy loads up in the air, and it brings the machine over forward. But again, you put the bucket down, it comes right back up. It is not as big a deal. The other big thing I think that makes them stable is that when you steer a skid steer, you steer it like a tank or like a zero-turn lawnmower. The left tires work forward and backwards together, and the right tires work forward and backwards together, and you spin it. So there is no angling front axle. On a farm tractor, if you get too heavy a load on it and you don't have enough ballast, and it picks the back end of that machine up in the air, those front wheels stay planted, and the whole machine swings like this and wants to go over sideways. It's a really uneasy feeling, and you don't have that with a skid steer because that front and back axle, they're all fixed. So if it does start to tip forward, if it starts to tip forward, it stays in line with the machine and the loader. You put your loader down. Not good if you tip one with forks on it onto your driveway, or if you pick a big log up and as it tips forward, the log comes off because the machine quickly goes back where it was. Just things you got to learn about driving them. But those are kind of the differences in how those things work. I see the skid steer. I should say there's a lot less pucker factor, it seems, at least for me, but also I have a lot more hours on one. You have to decide for yourself, but I think you get yourself in less trouble with a skid steer. The third thing I like about my skid steer, or any skid steer in general, is that they are indestructible. They are meant to take abuse. There's not all these, there's not as many parts on a skid steer. You don't have the 3-point hitch. You don't have the PTO. You don't have the steering mechanism. There's still a lot to them, but they are built like a tank. They are meant to take abuse. I have done and seen people do things with these that would probably snap a Kubota in half. Just the way you wrench on them. My father ripping concrete out, going underneath the sidewalk with a bucket and raising the back end of the machine in the air and bouncing it up and down to try and break the concrete. Things like that you would think would just cause that machine to fall apart. But man, they take the abuse and they take it for decades. Really, really solid machines. Number 4 is the turning radius, and this is kind of what these machines are known for. That's where they get their name, skid steer. You make the one side go forward and one side go backwards, and it takes 0 foot for the turning radius. You are limited by the footprint of the machine only, but it will spin 360 degrees over and over and over again within the footprint of the machine. Really helpful when you're in tight quarters, construction work, things like that. I found it really useful here doing snow removal when I get out on my road and I need to stay on the road because you don't want to get it stuck in the ditch. You're able to spin around and maneuver. Sometimes that helps you get out of situations where you are stuck if you can turn around and do it from another side. That's kind of what skid steers are known for, is 0 turning radius, great in tight areas. The 5th thing with the skid steer type machine is horsepower and hydraulic pressure. Like I said before, you could just go buy a bigger farm tractor. I think you'd have a hard time finding something that wasn't massive to rival the horsepower and hydraulic pressure on a skid steer. So my larger, this 4060 Kubota is, I don't know, I've heard it called a 40 horse, a 42, a 45. I would say 42 horsepower, somewhere in there, where this 435 skid steer here is a 65 horse. They have high flow hydraulics. This one doesn't, but many of them do. So you can really run, some big implements and heavy duty versions. When I take a PTO and I run a brush hog, my Kubotas are great for cutting grass. When you get a brush hog on the front of a skid steer, it's to mow the forest down. They are just way heavier duty, high powered machines. And I think that's one of the big differences between the two. The compact tractors are I guess lighter duty, but they're for lighter jobs. But when you need to demolish a house or do something heavy duty, the skid steer is the right choice. They definitely have heavier duty attachments. Like I said, increased pump capacity. That hydraulic pressure is way higher. and the motors tend to have more horsepower than what somebody would buy as the alternative in a farm tractor. Most people watching this video trying to decide which to get probably aren't going to go out and buy a 75 horsepower farm tractor to use on their property. It's just enormous, would be impractical. Number 6, the skid steers are digging machines. And I guess quite literally, not figuratively, they are a digging machine. My dad in his business would use his to dig room addition foundations. So if you need to dig dirt, you need to move dirt, the push capacity of these machines, the way they're set up, far surpasses any of the farm tractors. Tooth buckets on them. If you need to dig a hole, you need to make a berm, you need to move a berm, you want to rip out stumps, you want to do heavy duty digging. These machines are awesome. Compared to a farm tractor, they don't have the push and the weight to do that kind of work. It's not what they're meant for. Okay, so number 7 here, and this could really go either way. I'm going to say this is an advantage for the skid steer, but it might be something that would make someone opt for a compact tractor. When you go, at least this is my experience, and you guys tell me if it's different by you, but through my travels and the places I've worked and seen, I have not found many places that rent compact tractors. The places by me, they all have multiple skid steers that you can rent, and skid steer attachments, lots of attachments for them. So if you think you'd like to rent equipment a lot and you're on the fence, there's a lot more availability to rent attachments for a skid steer or rent the skid steer itself, which may be a reason to buy a compact tractor. Because I was trying to rent some attachments for my compact tractor. I thought a rototiller. That's something we till our garden once a year. You might not even have to do it if all the girls want to grow as pumpkins. We might not even rototill it this year. I couldn't rent a tiller. I couldn't find anyone. I could find lots of walk-behind tillers, but I couldn't find one to rent for my skid steer. Or I'm sorry, for my compact tractor. Any other things that if I wanted to try a brush hog, see how that worked with my tractor, I couldn't rent one. But you could rent just about anything for a skid steer. So in Kentucky, when I was trying to decide what machine we're going to have there, I decided to go with the Kubota, a little bigger one, so I wouldn't be stuck unable to do a lot of the things. But if I'm going to need the other machine and have to rent it, I would rather it be the one that I can easily rent. So that honestly was part of my decision to go that way. Number 8, the last thing, and I know I said I had 10 things, but then I looked at my list here, and I have 8, so there you go. The 8th thing that I like about the skid steer is it has a safer cab. Again, it does cut down on the visibility around the machine, but if you're working, like recently I had a rope around a tree and I was pulling a broken limb out of the tree. I don't know what that thing's going to do. I like to think I'm far enough away, but if it's going to slingshot across the yard, you're pretty exposed on those compact tractors. They do have rollover protection, the ROPS on the tractor. It's a big help if you're going to roll it down a hill. But at the same time, having that enclosed cab on a skid steer probably provides a little more safety if you were to go over in the machine, or more than anything, bring something down on top of yourself. If something falls off the loader when you've got it in the air, you've just got that extra layer of protection. At the same time, I use a Kubota to mow next to my creek and around my pond. Those are both kind of sketchy areas. They get that pucker factor up. But when I'm doing that, if that machine were to tip over into the pond or into my creek, I would be real glad that I wasn't inside that cage like on the skid steer, because it would probably just throw you from the machine. You wouldn't wind up, underwater trapped inside it. God, that sounds terrible. I hope that never happens to anybody. But if it did, I'd be glad to be on the Kubota. So hey guys, thanks for watching. As always, my opinion is worth just what you paid for it. But make your own decision, I hope this has been informative. If you got any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to answer them, or you guys can talk amongst yourselves. Hopefully you can find what you're looking for and make the right decision when it comes to the correct machine for you. Anyways, we will see you on the next one.